Hi there, and welcome to episode 4 of the Runway to Retirement podcast. And today's topic is probably the thing that I've talked most about with people over the years. Once we get past all the noise around investment, superannuation, etc., it's, well, how much am I actually going to need to live a good life in retirement? So it's a critical question, and it's got some complexity and it's got some parts to it. So that's what we're going to explore in this episode. Before I do that, just point out that everything I talk about in these episodes is general advice. That just means I'm giving you the best information I can, but it may not be suitable to your own circumstances. So you need to either do your own research before you act on anything or get advice before you act on anything. So enjoy. So let's talk about where this fits in terms of our 5 steps to building a retirement plan. This is absolutely step 1. This is the goals. This is the key question. How much will I need? And today's topic is actually how much income. We're going to do the next episode on how much capital because it's too complicated to put it all into one. And the first step is to work out how much income we need. And by how much income, I don't just mean how much taxable income. I mean how much cash flow do we have coming in a week, a month, whatever it is, to pay for the things that we need to pay for. So this is about spendable cash flow. So how much do I need? And it's to pay for regular life. It's to pay for the nice things, pay for the holidays, and then it's to pay for any of the toys, etc. But today we're going to be focusing on that income. Next episode, we're going to focus on, okay, if I need this much income, how much will I need in portfolio and superannuation, property, whatever your process, whatever your investment approach is going to be. So let's consider, firstly, what the experts say. And I'm always in two minds of this, but it's important for you to see what the experts say. You're going to see this if you're Googling how much do I need, because it comes up all the time. And let's have a look at what they say. So Money Smart, which is a government website, which is a great website for giving people kind of reasonably accurate and factual information, says you'll need 2/3 of your pre-retirement income. Now, this is kind of vague. So let me give you an example. Let's say someone's earning $100,000. That means 2/3, they'll need 67,000, 66,600. Maybe not. What if someone's earning 200,000? Will they need 2/3 of that is going to be about 140,000? Yeah, maybe not. It's an interesting guide, but it's focused on the income, not what someone's spending. I'm going to take you through some alternatives in a minute. ASFA, which is the Australian Super Fund Association, also puts out some awesome material. So they say for a modest retirement, a single will need about 31,875. And that was their figures in 2023. So obviously, that will be rising with inflation all the time. And they say a single would need 50,000 for a comfortable retirement. And then they say for a couple, 45,000 for modest and 70,482 for comfortable. Now, firstly, I laugh whenever I see precision like this. So look at that number, $50,004 to be comfortable. Don't forget that $4. Life is not that precise. I admire what they're doing. They could round this out. If I was doing it, I'd be saying, all right, singles, 32,000. Or 50, couples, 45 or 70. But don't worry about that. The point here is that this is what some expert has said you might need. Now, it makes no allowance for where you live. I mean, is 31,875 going to cut it for a retiree in Sydney, particularly in somewhere like the eastern suburbs? Probably not. Might it do it for someone who's in a country town in South Australia? Maybe not, because it's all individual as well. So while these are good starting points, they're not where you should start. And I'll talk about how you should start in a minute. But the other thing, it ignores all your individual preferences. It ignores what you're capable of. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about, this is chicken and egg stuff, by the way, because we're going to help. We're going to talk about how to work out how much you need, but then you're going to have to work out what your capability is. So that is how much your assets will actually produce. And that depends on a whole lot of things, which I'm going to save up for the next episode. But the first step, how much do we need? So we've got some expert opinions there. None of this, by the way, it says modest and comfortable. But what about for a really good retirement? What about for an awesome retirement? How much are we going to need? And this ignores the fact that people get tuned in, they get used to whatever they've been spending. So this is critical. If you've been spending 100,000 a year and that's what you're used to, if all of a sudden you have to go back to 70,000 because that's what ASFA thinks is a comfortable lifestyle, you won't feel comfortable. You'll feel hard done by. Now you've got to work out your capability to see what you might be able to live off, whether that 100,000 is sustainable. But it's very much work around what you need. So ignore the averages, ignore the experts. I get asked all the time when we're sitting down with our clients, what's sort of normal? What's sort of average? And I go, well, there's no real average. I've seen everything literally from people that I know who can live off the smell of an oily rag. And I know some single age pensioners that are living off the age pension and saving. Now, the age pension for a single is $30,000. So now, if you're in a capital city in Australia, that's really hard to live off. It obviously depends whether you own a home or you don't own a home. For most of our audience here, which is people in their 50s that are doing okay, they're going to have a home and they're going to have a decent amount of income. The Centrelink is the safety net. It's 30,000, for a single. So it's and you don't want to be reliant on Centrelink. So we'll do another episode on Centrelink one day. It's a safety net. So, but certainly for most of the people we see and talk to, it's not enough, particularly for those early years of retirement. But it's a brilliant safety net. It's a wonderful country we live in that has these safety nets. So let's talk about the steps. Firstly, that concept. You're not average. You're you. You need to be you. You need to work out what you need, what you want. So that will be very, very specific about how your life looks now. And that's kind of where we're going to start. So 3 broad steps for you to work out how much you need. Firstly, you're going to work out what you're spending now, but not what you're earning now. Now, maybe you're spending everything that you're earning. So you think I've got to earn the same amount, but there's lots of spending that you won't have in retirement. But firstly, you're going to have to work out what you're spending now. Now, some of you will keep budgets. Some of you will keep track of this stuff. Some of you won't. There is a point where you're going to have to work out what you're spending. It's easy to work backwards. So if we work backwards, we just take what are you earning, what are you paying on things that are going to disappear, which is some of the things I'm going to go through now, like mortgages, taxes, etc. What's left over, and out of what's left over, how much are you saving and how much are you spending? And the spending is the answer right here. So as I go through this, let me use an example. Let me use a typical client that might be similar to someone I've seen recently. So I work this based on a couple I saw recently. So in terms of what they're spending, we work backwards. So we said, okay, at the moment they're earning about 200,000 between them. They're paying about 60 grand a year in mortgage. They're obviously paying taxes. So by the time we worked backwards, worked out they're spending about 75 to 80,000. So let's call it 80,000 for this number. So let's say you work out you're spending 80,000 now, and don't just take 80,000, by the way. Obviously, you've got to work this out for you. But let's say that was 80,000. Then we're going to take away all the expenses they won't have. Now, in this case, I've already done some of this to get there, but this is examples. Mortgage. Will you still have a mortgage? Hopefully not. One of the key decisions at retirement is if I haven't already paid off my mortgage, do I take some of my assets to pay off the mortgage? Do I take some of my super? Do I sell a property? Do I sell some shares? Have I got some savings? In a perfect world, the mortgage is 100% clear in retirement. It's a good topic for another day. So what about taxes? If I've said, oh, wow, I'm earning 200,000, after tax, we're clearing 150,000. That means I need 150,000 in retirement. Well, not really. By the time we take off the mortgage, by the time we take off the taxes, that's dropping. So in this case, that was dropping a substantial amount. It was about 5 grand a month on mortgage. So straight away off 150 down to 90, and so on. Life insurance, during your working years, you may have had life insurance because you needed it. You had debts, you had dependents, you had kids. As you retire, you don't need life insurance. There's no point having life insurance. If you've got it, it's going to get crazy expensive. So if you've been spending 2, 3, 4, 5, anywhere, or higher than that on life insurance, you can take that away, assuming you're going to cancel it. You might have been paying for the kids' school fees, uni fees, just having them in the house. They might still be in the house. It's more common these days to have kids living at home longer, and sometimes that'll cross over to the early years of retirement. But for lots of couples that are in their 50s that are planning this, they might still have kids that are just finishing school or still got a way to go in school and private school fees. So we can back that out. So once we back all this out, we can also then back out work expenses. So for some people that might involve a train card because they're traveling by train to work. It might involve petrol costs. It might be an expensive car they've got to run. It might be clothing. It might be tools. So these things you can take away if they're going to be expenses that you won't need. And then we're going to add back the expenses that you want. So these are things that you want to do in retirement that you're going to need some money for. So it could be extra travel budget that you haven't necessarily had, but it's going to be money that you want to spend on travel. I'll talk more about this in a minute. It might be for memberships, whether that's gym memberships. It might be for your regular yoga course. It might be for your regular Pilates training, but you're adding things that you want to do that are going to make a good retirement life. And the rest is for you to decide what else have you got on your list in your retirement stages and chunks that you're going to need to pay for. For some, it might be golf membership, it might be a membership of a bridge club. It might be the gym membership that you want to start to go regularly. It might be whatever it is, you've got to work it out for you. What does a good life look like in retirement? And you can tune that in for one of our other episodes where we look at the important chunks of retirement. And it's always relevant. The reason planning and retirement planning is necessary is to work out, as well as working out how much money you need, you're working out what are you going to do with your life. So once you stop work, and refer to some of our other episodes, once you stop work, you've got all this time in theory, and you'll fill that up with things, whether that's exercise, health, projects, grandkids, travel, new hobbies, new side hustles. But it's individual. It's totally up to you. But you want to have a bit of purpose. You want to have a bit of and a bit of what's going to get you up. You want to have a bit of a plan about what a good life looks like. So any of those things, you're adding the cost. So let me just recap on that. Work out what you're spending now, so not what you're earning. Take away the expenses that you won't have: mortgage, taxes, life insurance, kids. Work expenses. Leave stuff if you're still going to have it. If you've still got some expenses you might have for the kids, or you've committed to helping the grandkids with school fees or whatever it is, if you're going to have them, leave them there, obviously. But you're trying to get to a number. So in the case of that person I was talking, we worked out they were spending 80,000 now. That was after taking away the mortgage, by the way, and taxes. So then we took off, there was some school fees in that as well. So we worked out, life was probably only costing them about 60 grand a year. But then that was without holidays and other things. So then we added back 20,000 for travel. We added back another 10,000 to cover membership. So all of a sudden we had a target for them of 90,000 a year. So now we've got that number, then we can work out, do they have enough assets? And as I said, I'll talk about that in the next episode. So the other thing to consider, and I hate to add complexities, but some of this stuff is simple for some people, for others it's complex, but you need to think about the 4 stages that many people go through during retirement. Not to say this happens to everyone, but we've talked to lots of people over the years, and these are the stages that we think they go through. So firstly, there's the bucket list stage. So the bucket list is normally happens when people stop work and they've got all these things on their bucket list. It might be a trip around Australia. It might be get the caravan. We're doing 2 years around Australia. It might be we're going to do this mega trip to Europe. But the bucket list stage tends to be short term. So this normally runs for a few years. Could be 1 year, could be 2 years, could be 3 years. And it would be things like big overseas trips, experiences. It could be absolutely anything you've got on your bucket list. And there's a cost to that. So you want to do this cost separately. So I'd keep a separate scoreboard of what you need for your bucket list, and you might end up with 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. It's your bucket list. It depends on your capability. But that's one of the stages that people go through, that first stage. For some people, there's a lot on the bucket list. For others, there's not much at all. So second stage is the active stage. So this is from the time you retire while you're still reasonably physically capable and well, and you're wanting to do stuff. So this is the regular holidays. You might be planning 1 trip, 2 trips a year. You might be planning regular travel. You're doing all the things you like to do. This is the important chunk of your retirement that people look forward to. eventually, and this might last until someone's anywhere from 70 to 85, depending on their health. So the healthier you are, the longer this stage will be. And I'll talk about how this relates to the income in a minute. But then there's the slow and steady stage. So this might be where people have stopped traveling as much. They might not be as physically active. So they've slowed down a bit, but they're still enjoying a good steady life and still got most of their expenditure. And then unfortunately for many people, there's the ultimate reality is there's a stage where we decline and we may need care of some sort. Now, through all that, there's kind of a baseline. So we talked about that client before. We worked out for them, as I said, about 60,000 by the time we had 90,000 as their target. 30,000 of that was nice stuff. So we worked out we actually want to make sure they want to see that they can get 60,000 forever. But then, they didn't have too much on the bucket list. So 30,000 was then for that active stage. So 90,000 until they're 85 is what we were planning. And then we're happy for that to drop back to about the 60,000. That would provide them with the type of lifestyle they've been used to. So in this case, they had a baseline of 60,000 with the nice stuff of the extra 30,000, so taking it to 90,000. If someone also had a lot on their bucket list, then that might be another 50,000 or 100,000 saved up extra to do the bucket list stuff. Now, I'm not going to talk in detail at the moment about costs for care. For most of the people we see and we help, if they've got a house, that will help pay for the costs of care. And in the next episode, when I talk about how much you need, part of that will be how much you need for care or legacy. So they're the 4 stages that people will go through. So you're planning how much you need, predominantly for the active stage, then add a bit extra on for the bucket list stage, and that'll start to give you your number. So I'm going to wrap in a minute, but before we wrap, as we go through this, I know it creates questions. How can I learn more? What if I want to take some action? And there's multiple sources you can find. If you look on our website, you'll see all sorts of resources there, including the other episodes of this podcast. You can read or listen to our book, and that's got a full overview of how to do your retirement planning for an awesome retirement. You can keep tuning the podcast where we'll keep giving you hopefully great information to help you with your retirement planning. We have a fully fledged course on how you can put all this together for those that like to do things themselves. Or of course, if you say, wow, this all sounds a little complicated, I could use some help with this. Can you find us an advisor? We can do that too. We help find advisors that absolutely practice the same sort of what I call real financial planning that we do. We also have a mini course, by the way, called How Much. You'll see that on the website, which allows you to get stuck into the first and most important bits. How much income will I need and how much capital will I need? That course comes with a calculator to help you work through all that as well. And you'll see some examples of that in our next episode. So once again, the 5 steps, the meaningful financial goals, making sure we've got the key part of that goals is how much will I need? We've talked today about how to do that, and I'll wrap that. The key takeaways for you is work out the baseline. So do your minuses, do your pluses, work out what you need now. We say to people often, you don't want to be a pauper now to be spendthrift later, nor do you want to be a spendthrift now to be a pauper later. Trying to find a baseline of a good quality life, both in your working years and retirement. That means you've got a nice life and you don't have to worry about it. From your baseline, you'll add any bucket list requirements for a separate pot, but then you're also going to add the active stage retirement. So in my client's example, we got a 60,000 baseline. Let's say we also put aside 50,000 for some bucket list travel, but we also then want 30,000 a year for that active stage. And then once again, you might need to repeat this once you work out what your capability is, because this client can be in 2 positions. So the one we've talked about where it's $90,000, 60,000 baseline. Step 2, which we're going to do in the next podcast, where we go away and work out what they're capable of. We're either going to come up with 1 of 3 scenarios. Yep, they're on track for that. They're going to have enough money for that, or they're not on track for that, or they're well above that. So all of those things lead to decisions about whether you need to work longer, need to stop work, whether you can stop work earlier, whether you need to trim back your plans, or whether you can boost up your plans. So that's why this stuff is a little bit chicken and egg. So first, we work out the income that we need. Secondly, we work out the capital that we've got, that we're on track for, and what we're going to need for that. And then it's trade-off time. And in our fully fledged course, we walk through all those trade-offs to help people make those key decisions about when they're going to retire. So thank you for your attention as always. That's a wrap. As I said, you can find us on all the social medias, but more importantly on our website with all the information that I talked about. If you enjoy this stuff, please feel free to put in comments. Let us know what you want to hear about. We can design these episodes to be very suitable. We like to answer real life questions. We don't like theoretical stuff. Don't keep us a secret. Share us with your friends. Until next time, you have a great day.